Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Neopost and ProShip Parcel Rate Change webinar. I'm Caroline, and I'm here with our shipping experts, Justin Kramer and Pat Mango, who are going to talk to you about what's new and also what is changing in shipping this year for the three major carriers, UPS, FedEx, and USPS. And they're also going to talk about how your business, whether big or small, can adjust to these rate changes for a successful 2019. So Justin is the Global Project Management Director and the co-founder of ProShip, and he brings with him nearly 2 decades of experience in enterprise logistics and shipping software. And also with me, I have Pat Mango. Pat is the Manager of Postal Relations here at Neopost, and he brings with him a deep background in the mailing industry and over 21 years of experience as a postal expert. So before I hand the mic over to our experts, just to let you know, we'll be doing a Q&A at the end. So if you do have questions as you're going through, please enter them into the Q&A widget that you'll find at the bottom left of your console. And with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to Justin Kramer, who is going to kick things off by going through what's on the agenda for the webinar today. Justin.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, so today we want to cover several topics all revolving around rate change. So we want to give you a little bit of history on rate changes in the past. We want to do a deep dive into each of the 3 major carriers we want to talk about today. We want to be talking about dimensional weights, where we are now, and maybe a little bit of how we got where we are. We want to look at the risk associated with expired rates, as well as how to prevent those risks from becoming a reality. Near the end, we're going to cover how to take more control over your shipping costs and how to move to a multi-carrier shipping system, how that can actually assist you in that control. Okay? So as we look at the general rate increase, one of the things we really want to say is, we expected both parcel and freight carriers to have a rate increase, but it really should be called out that not only have base rates increased, but the accessorial fees, all the other fees that a carrier can charge you, they've really seen a major increase this year. And we'll cover those in detail as we go forward. So just a quick recap of what we found this year. Basically, as an average, it's important that you know that even though the average is around 4.9% for the 3 major carriers in North America, that doesn't mean that the lanes that you're using have been covered. So you might want to find out if your particular rates for the lanes you're using have raised significantly higher than 4.9%, or maybe you're lucky and it's going to be less than 4.9%. Next, with fuel surcharges being a significant part of any shipping costs, it's important to understand that those are growing year over year. Even though, as we see in the fuel pumps right now, we're not seeing a major impact there, but we are still seeing a major impact with our carriers and their fuel surcharges. If you happen to ship bulky or heavy parcels, you can expect to see an increase in your surcharges. So you really want to find ways to avoid void space in your packaging and really compress those things down to as small as possible. And it's really going to help maintain your shipping costs going forward. Again, we talked about that we want to talk towards dim weight pricing. It was introduced several years ago by the major carriers, and as you can expect, once it's been introduced, they've been slowly lowering those dim weight factors. And if you don't know what a dim weight factor is, we'll discuss that later or during our conversation today. And as we look at expanding your carrier options, we want to use that as part of a tool to combat a lot of these increases, so that you've got choices and things of that nature that allow you to select the lowest cost carrier that will meet your shipping needs. Now, of course, the last 2 years have seen an introduction in peak season surcharges, and these look like they're here to stay. We'll discuss a little bit about that to make sure you know how and when they affect you prior to them actually going into effect, so you can plan accordingly for your pre-peak specials and promotions. And finally, our customers tell us that rate changes is probably one of the #1 concern. We're going to discuss how without a multi-carrier shipping system, or with multi-carrier shipping system, you can see how it can become easier with one and more difficult without a multi-carrier shipping system to really truly manage the carrier rates. All right, and Pat, if I could, let me go ahead and throw it over to you. Let you talk about the major pieces of the rate changes that we've seen this year.
Sure. Thank you, Justin, and thank you everybody for attending the webinar, and I hope everyone's having a great New Year's. So the next slide illustrates the 2019 rate changes, the announcement, the effective announcement date, the actual effective date of the rate increase, and the average increase across the board for all three major carriers, the Postal Service, FedEx, and UPS. As Justin said, we're going to take a deep dive into dim weight, what that means to you, what that means to your invoices and your extra charges. As Justin said, we're going to talk about surcharges and what they mean to you on a daily basis as well. Just real quick, if anyone needs to download the Postal Service's new rates, they are up. You can just Google Notice 123, N-O-T-I-C-E, Notice 123, and you will get all 75 pages of the Postal Service's new rates. Justin, you want to kick us off with UPS's rate changes?
Well, first, let's take a quick note on this one. One of the things to note, especially on this slide in general, is when the carriers are announcing versus when their effective dates are. If you're a heavy postal user, you'll notice the fact that they gave you not only the earliest warning, but they gave you the longest time before those rates come into effect. As a matter of fact, of the three, they're the only ones who are not in effect already. Okay? FedEx comes in the middle with their rates taking effect just a couple of days ago, and UPS gave their customers only 21 days notice that they were going to have to do those updates. So just a little something to take into account, that as you do start to look at, if you are a fourth quarter peak season shipper, these things will affect you in 2019, just like they affected many of our customers in 2018. And so with that, let's go ahead and let's do our first poll. Carolyn, do you want to go ahead and introduce this first poll?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple fees and surcharges that we wanted to talk about, and we wanted to hear from you. What fee or surcharge do you think will hit your business the hardest this year? So take your time. There are a couple on there. If you haven't heard of them, that's all right. We'll go through them. We've got an address correction fee, a residential surcharge, a surcharge, incorrect dim weight, and a failure to transmit package level detail. So we're just going to wait for those to come in. Take your time, and we'll go through them.
All right, we'll give this about 15 more seconds, and then we'll go ahead and push towards the results. Okay, and let's look and see what we've got for results. Looks like the clear winner is address correction fees, followed by incorrect dim weights. You know, that's kind of what we expected. Having good quality data on your addresses are extremely important. So you may want to either be partnering with somebody that'll actually do those address corrections for you, or you may be looking for software, shipping software that allows that to occur as close to the customer as possible, or allows you to batch upload those items as part of that. Now, I kind of expected dim weight to be high on the list there. It is definitely something that is affecting the market every single day. So it's something that we have an entire section of this talk dedicated to. Patrick, was there anything insightful that you saw on this as well?
Yeah, I think the address correction fee should have been the number one answer, and it was. I think the industry average, if I'm correct, are about 2% of addresses aren't correct. So when you factor in how many shipments you're doing on a daily basis, 2% or roughly around 2%, it can really cut into your margin. And I think the residential surcharge is a big one as well. And the dim weight, I'm not too surprised, because it is confusing, but it is a big topic, and And we'll get into it in a few future slides, and I think we could spend a lot of time on that.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so as I transition towards the next one, I do want to point out two of them that made the list that some of you are aware of, such as the surcharge and the failure to transmit package level detail. These are two new fees coming from UPS that you definitely want to be aware of, especially if you're a UPS-only shipper. So let's go ahead and move forward here, and let's talk a little bit about what UPS is changing. Now, first thing, again, we found it very odd in the industry that they announced so late and were the first ones to have their rate change take effect. This just means that all of us need to be on our toes this upcoming year to assume that we're going to see a window that small, if not smaller, to begin with. So making sure that you're leveraging shipping software that allows you to do that update, that's going to have those changes, and that's going to have the minimal effect on your warehouse personnel or your shipping personnel is extremely important. This year, UPS also went ahead and added a new set of rates. So you've got your standard list rates if you don't have daily pickup, and there's also a daily rate solution now. So you want to understand, you may want to talk with your UPS rep and understand, where do you actually fit in this? Okay. As we look at deeper and deeper into this, one of the other things, especially if you're a 3PL or if you leverage 3PLs, understand that third-party billing fee going up by 80% can really change the way things work. Okay. This is going to make those third-party billed items more expensive to ship, and is probably going to encourage you or the parties on behalf of which you ship, if you are a 3PL, to want to provide dedicated accounts for your origins in order to minimize the impact of this fee. Again, with the running theme here that the post office has, or I'm sorry, that all the carriers have, having an increase in charges for anything that is extremely heavy or extremely awkward, that additional handling weight increase over 91%, that's really important. Now, the major carriers have gone ahead and partnered with the United States Post Office to provide postal last mile services to try to help reduce costs and increase coverage areas. But you also want to note that because of, as Patrick will talk about later, because of some of the changes in the United States Post Office, we're starting to see those affect. They're starting to see those changes to the post office affect the postal last mile services for UPS and FedEx. So take that into account. And of course, we put on our poll some of the new charges that are available here. The failure to transmit PLD. Automation can make that pretty easy for you to make sure that always happens. And of course, large package surcharges and additional handling surcharges have been modified. Again, you may want to look at how that affects you. But I do want to call out, if you are somebody who gets a lot of fees, UPS has added a surcharge this year. So if you are getting a lot of address correction fees, weight correction fees, you're not passing dim weights or dimensions in properly, and they're redimming those packages for you, you may find that you have an additional charge on your bill, which can dramatically increase your expected costs. So accuracy at the shipping station, being able to leverage automated tools, scan, weigh, print, and apply tunnels for those of you who have full automation, be able to put dimensionalizing scales in place, or just being able to say, you know what, I'm using box size A, and have that properly in the system so that an operator doesn't have to manually type that, can be extremely important to ensure that you reduce the risk of getting an excessive surcharge. All right, Carolyn, let's go ahead and push it back over to you for our next poll.
Absolutely. So this one is about FedEx, and this is drawing your attention to a flat rate option within that carrier, and that is FedEx provides flat rate pricing. And what is that service called? FedEx Smart Post, FedEx Express Saver, or FedEx One Rate? We'll talk a little bit about this service after the results.
Excellent. And again, we'll give this about 30 seconds for everybody to respond. But again, as Carolyn mentioned, our hope here is to educate as well here, and we understand that not everybody on this webinar uses every service that every carrier offers. So hopefully this will help you to understand that there are additional services out there that, depending upon how you're shipping, might be very beneficial to you. All right, and 5 more seconds here, and we'll go ahead and push up the results. Excellent. And it does look like the bulk of the audience got it correct. It is FedEx One rate. The idea behind FedEx One rate is if it fits in the box, it ships for that price. It provides you an option that can reduce your shipping costs depending upon the experience you're attempting to present to your operators. I'm sorry, to your customers, not operators. Patrick, did you have anything to add to this?
No, I think you covered it all.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so now that we're talking about FedEx, let's go ahead and move on and dig into their rate changes. Much like UPS, about a 4.9% average, but you'll note that their freight increased almost 6%. Now, working with a lot of LTL carriers around the country, this is actually a relatively small increase, as a lot of our audit partners and things of that nature are telling us that they're seeing nearly a 20% increase in LTL rates. So we do think this is going to be an advantage for FedEx, as their rates are increasing significantly slower than their counterparts in the market. So if you are somebody who ships pallets or full truckload, you may want to make sure you're looking at this as part of your rate shop processing to ensure you're taking advantage of this relatively small increase in relationship to the rest of the industry. Okay. And of course, as we mentioned, there are all these accessorial fees that are changing. For retailers in the audience, we all know that being able to provide return services is something that is extremely valuable for customer retention. Even if they don't use those return services, that the security that those customers feel by having a proven option to actually return those items that they either purchased in error, purchased multiples to get the right size for, anything of that nature, is extremely important. And understand in this case, this is when you're printing a return label in advance that it's going to take effect. So talk to your carriers, understand how this is going to affect, talk to your multi-carrier shipping software vendor, understand how you can use other systems rather than printing a return label up front in order to minimize the impact of a cost like this. Okay. Again, that reoccurring theme, anything big or anything extremely heavy is seeing an exceedingly large impact on the rate change this year. And here you see not only is it oversized, but it's anything with additional handling as well. And your delivery area surcharge for SmartPost, again, going up. I see this as an impact from where the United States Post Office is making some changes here, and how that is impacting the carriers that use them for last mile solutions. Right. Let's go ahead and move on to our next question, Carolyn.
Sure. So now as we're moving into the USPS rates, wanted to bring your attention to first-class package services and the changes that are going on for that particular service. So what are the prices for first-class package service? How are they determined? Are they determined by zone, by weight, by both zone and weight, or is it per piece?
All right, and again, we'll give this one 30 seconds so that everybody can go ahead and respond. I know some of you may be watching in conference rooms, and you got to get over to that computer and make the selection, and we appreciate the feedback that we're getting from our audience right now. All right, just a few more seconds here. And let's look at the results. Okay, Patrick, do you want to take this one?
Sure. That's everyone was correct. It's zone and weight. And this is the first year that it is changing from ounce-based rates to zone and weight. So congratulations, everyone getting that one right. And I do want to talk about that for a little bit. So the Postal Service's competition, the other major carriers, they start at 1 pound rates. So first-class mail parcels are still, in my opinion, have tremendous advantage when you're shipping low-weight stuff, ounce-based items, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 ounces, what have you. It's still an advantage. It's first-class mail parcels, so the delivery date is the same as first-class mail, which is 1 to 4 days nationally. So Saturdays, of course, is a regular processing and delivery day for the United States Postal Service. So first-class mail parcels are delivered 6 days a week. So that's an extra 52 delivery days a year when you compare that to some of the competition. And let's delve into the USPS rates a little bit more. First off, I just want to state that all three major carriers that we're talking about today do a phenomenal job in what they do every day on a daily basis. Especially, in my opinion, the Postal Service, when you factor in the Postal Service delivers over 47% of the world's mail. That's a pretty big undertaking. So I'll talk about Priority Mail Express a little bit. As you all know, Priority Mail Express is the new name change. It used to be called Express Mail, and now it's called Priority Mail Express. That is the Postal Service's overnight guaranteed delivery. It's delivered 365 days a year. So Christmas Day, the postal carriers are out there delivering Priority Mail Express packages. There are some rural zip codes in the country where it is not guaranteed overnight, where it is a 2-day delivery. But again, when you factor in Sundays and holidays, for the most part, it's a 1 or 2-day service.
And Patrick, that's really important for our audience to understand, because a lot of software out there can take advantage and understand, with solutions like advanced date shopping, can understand the differences in each carrier's service or contract changes you may have with your carrier services. So it's definitely something we wanted to call out, is that as you look at the advantages and disadvantages not only of each carrier, but each carrier service, you want to make sure that you're leveraging a software partner that can help you execute that in an automated fashion. So as you mentioned, if you have to make a delivery on Christmas, as the system knows it can happen, and we're using Priority Mail Express, that's something you should be able to do from the warehouse.
Exactly. Thank you, Justin. Dimensional weight. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in more depth, but at a 40,000-foot level, dimensional weight was instituted by UPS and FedEx for all of their parcels. The Postal Service has dimensional weight on priority mail parcels over 1 cubic foot, destined zones 5 to 9. The way dimensional weight is calculated is you take the length, multiply it times the width, multiply it times the height of the box, and you divide it by the volumetric divisor. Postal Service uses a volumetric divisor of 194. Their competition uses a volumetric divisor a little bit lower, 139, I believe. So the lower the volumetric divisor, or I'll say the higher the volumetric divisor, the better. So the Postal Service is still in a better light with their volumetric divisor. So the way it works is you multiply the length times the width times the height. You come up with a factor. You divide it by the volumetric divisor. You come up with a number, and the carriers just round that up. So if you come up with a factor of, say, 6.2, they round it up to 7. You're paying for a 7-pound box when in fact your box can be 1 pound. And the reason why this was instituted, as you can all imagine, UPS and FedEx have a lot of, or now have a lot of room on their planes when the boxes typically fit the contents more exactly. Priority mail. The Postal Service's priority mail is a 1, 2, or 3-day product. Priority mail used to be a 1 to 3-day product, and now it's a 1, 2, or 3-day delivery product, but that's based on origin and destination zip codes. So if I'm sending a package to Caroline in San Francisco from New York, I cannot say I want it priority mail 2-day. It's based on origin and destination, so that particular package would be a 3-day delivery. Priority Mail has $50 worth of insurance baked in. Priority Mail Express has $100 worth of insurance baked in. Both have full-blown tracking and tracing, pretty much on par now with the competition. Over Christmas time, I sent about 14 packages with the Postal Service, and all 14, I got 13 scans on all 14 packages. So pretty much it's on par with the competition, which is very good to hear. The Postal Service does not have some of the surcharges that their competition has. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but their competition has fuel surcharges. Postal Service doesn't have any. Address correction. Postal Service doesn't have that. Forwarding. Postal Service doesn't charge for forwarding. And residential delivery. So you have to look at your carrier and what they consider a residential delivery and even an extended residential delivery, because there are surcharges associated with residential deliveries. And just to give you an example, in 2018, FedEx and UPS's residential delivery surcharge was about $3.50 per package. Their address correction was a little over $14 per package. So as I mentioned earlier, the industry average of 2% of your addresses aren't correct. When you kind of think about 2% of your outgoing packages, if the address is not correct, or even the address itself, if I live at 15 Main Street and I order something from Amazon and they put 51 Main Street, that's an address correction. With the Postal Service, that's not an address correction. So Justin and I will talk a little bit later about analyzing your invoice. And most of the time the marketing folks, they get the verbal commitment of discounts and so forth from the carriers, but the bill actually goes to the finance department. So you have to get your finance and your marketing people together and kind of go over line item by line item over your bill. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth as we go on. And the last bullet here again is the dim weight. And Justin and I have a slide dedicated to dim weight, which we'll talk a little bit more in depth. Justin, you have anything to add on that?
No, again, there's a lot of changes here. So I think the only thing I would really add is this is a type of thing that it's very difficult for any one person to retain, let alone a team of people. So this is, again, where software should be put in place and automation should be put in place to automatically take advantage of these things. Right.
And I would like to give you
poll. Oh, go ahead.
I would like to give everyone some stats on the projected e-commerce spending in the United States. In 2018, e-commerce spending was $449 billion. And it is projected in 2020 to go up to $531 billion. So as you can see, shipping plays a major, major part in e-commerce spending going forward. The next slide is the IMPB tracking, or Intelligent Mail Package Barcode. And we'll talk about some of the benefits of the Intelligent Mail Package Barcode with the Postal Service.
But first, just a quick polling question to get a feel about how everyone, if people know about the IMPB labels, if they're using them, etc. So what are the benefits of IMPB labels? Is it advanced tracking, commercial-based pricing discounts, or both, advanced tracking and commercial-based pricing discounts?
All right, let's give this a quick 30 seconds to let everybody respond so we can get good results and everybody who's watching can understand, get a good feel for the way the rest of the industry is understanding the impact of IMPB-based labels. All right, and about 5 more seconds here. And our results.
Look at that. Everybody is very well informed. That is the correct answer. Advanced tracking and commercial-based pricing discounts. So what exactly does that mean? Well, you get with the Intelligent Mail package barcode label, you do get the full tracking of that shipment, and you get the commercial-based pricing, which is a discount off the retail rates. Just to give you a quick example what some of the discounts are, if you're using a Priority Mail legal envelope, you're going to save about 40 cents by utilizing an Intelligent Mail package barcode label. If you're using, say, a medium flat rate box, you're going to save $1.55. Large flat rate box, you're going to save $2.35. So as you can see, the savings are pretty significant, and they can mount up by utilizing an Intelligent Mail package barcode label. And Caroline will go into that in depth a little bit later on how to get the discounts. With our NeoShip product, you can obtain the IMPB label and get the advanced tracking and the discounts. And our next slide, or before I go to our next slide, Justin, do you have anything to add about IMPB labels?
Nope. I've learned from the expert here, so that's excellent information. And let's go ahead and move on to the next poll. Carolyn, do you want to introduce that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to the USPS rate change that's going into effect January 27th, later in this month, there will be a second rate change that's focused on changing some of the rates around dim weight, and that'll be in effect June 23rd. So does anyone know what will be the new USPS dim weight divisor effective later in the year? It's going to be 139, 166, or 194.
Excellent. And as usual, we'll give this about 30 seconds for our audience to go ahead and respond, so we can see what the consensus says and give you the actual numbers once we've got through that 30 seconds.
This is a good question because I don't even know.
All right, in about 5 more seconds. And the results. Okay, so it looks like people are a little split. Yeah,
Very
people are a little split over what it's going to be.
Yeah, well, this was a tricky question a little bit because the volumetric divisor currently is 194, and I didn't mention that in June the Postal Service might change the volumetric divisor. So that's pretty good that people got this right. And what we've been told is it will in June go to 166. So again, the higher the volumetric divisor, the better. But that was a good poll question.
That's a great segue as well, because 194 going down to 166, that seems extreme. We mentioned that the UPS is using 139 now. If we really look at this in long term, and obviously I've been in the industry a while here, when dim weight factors were introduced in express services, they were actually above 200. And once they were introduced into ground services and things of that nature, we've seen them go ahead and decrease year after year. And with the United States Post Office adding this as well, it's now become very ubiquitous throughout the North American shipping industry. That if you are shipping a ground or an express package, you do have to look at the dim weights and understand how your packaging affects how your shipping costs are going to be. Let's dig deeper into that, as we do want to definitely talk about dim weight pricing or dimensional pricing. Okay, so as we look at this here, what the carriers want to do is they want to take the size of the package, the physical volume that it's going to take within their trucks and their planes, and understand, in order to best maximize the fuel economy, the number of parcels they can ship, how much effective weight do they really need within that vehicle? Okay, and as they've changed things, they want that effective weight to be higher and higher in each vehicle. So that's where your larger boxes, that's where shipping anything that has a lot of void space or empty space in it has really become less cost effective year after year. So when you look at something that's small and but still lightweight, like a game controller here, you can see that because it's so lightweight, you're getting a rate impact of about 34% above its actual weight cost itself. Something like a handbag, again, slightly less. You might be able to package that in such a way that there's less void associated with it. But something with rigid sides, like a pet bed or something of that nature, here you have a lot of void that can be in that spot. So packaging really becomes packaging and packing in your warehouse, especially if you have multi-line item orders. The ability to go ahead and put that in a shippable container, preferably something with a box maker's mark on it, putting that in a shippable container becomes really important if you want to minimize the impact of these ever-decreasing divisors on your shipping costs. Patrick, do you have something that you wanted to add directly to this? I know that we could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah, we could talk about this until next week. I think another reason why the dimensional weight came into being is, Justin, you touched on it prior, about 10 minutes ago, about a partnership between the Postal Service and UPS and FedEx for the last mile. And we didn't really get into that, and that's another day. But that product is called Parcel Select. And the way that works is, I'll digress for a little bit. The Postal Service is not allowed to own their own airlines. So all of their packages have to go on domestic flights. That's not an advantage for the Postal Service. So remember we talked about surcharges. The Postal Service doesn't have any. So that kind of balances out, right? So the product of Parcel Select, UPS and FedEx will come to your business, pick up your packages, put them on their planes, fly them to the destination, deliver them to the Postal Service's local post office, and then the carriers will deliver them the last mile. So that's what Justin alluded to when he talked about a partnership. So that partnership is called Parcel Select, and that's how it works. So the UPS and FedEx needed more space on their planes for more and more postal items. So dimensional weight was probably a factor within those decisions. Right,
that's
Justin,
very
what do you
insightful.
think?
Yeah, I know you're correct. So and hopefully a lot of our audience understood that, the fact that how intertwined so many of our carriers are, but
right.
How it all comes down to maximizing the efficiency of these very expensive line hauls, whether they're road trains that you may see on the highways, or whether they're filling these huge planes that the carriers, or that at least FedEx and UPS are using to move a lot of these priority shipments throughout the country and throughout the world.
Right. So a lot of times we look at why did this carrier do this and institute this? There are legitimate business reasons behind it. For instance, priority mail. I talked about priority mail being a 1 to 3 day service, and now it's a 1, 2, or 3 day service, and that's a partnership between the Postal Service. It started with Postal Service and FedEx, and then UPS has gotten involved in that as well. They're taking priority mail on their planes, and then the Postal Service is picking it up at the destination airport and then delivering it. So it's getting to the destination cities a lot quicker. So that enabled the Postal Service to make it a day certain delivery. Again, it's not a guaranteed 1, 2, or 3 day. It's a day certain 1, 2, or 3 day. So the product is getting to the destination cities a lot earlier than it used to, when it had to sit at JFK Airport and wait for a domestic flight to have some space on it.
Again, very insightful inside knowledge that you've got there of the inner workings of many of our carriers. And you know what? As we talk through this, we've talked a lot about the various fees, the various changes, how dim weight impacts, and that brings us to our next slide, which is risks. So as we go forward, we want to make sure that you understand how to mitigate some of these risks that exist in the market right now. And those risks really come around how you're getting your rates. So if you're a small shipper and you're just going to the United States Post Office.gov and shipping there, or going directly to FedEx.com or UPS.com, you probably don't have some of these risks. But if you've taken some of that shipping in-house, if you're using carrier systems or you're using a multi-carrier shipping system like the two we're going to talk about later during the conversation, you want to make sure that you understand which carriers have automatic updates and which carriers don't. Two in particular, we've talked mostly about UPS and FedEx today, or UPS, FedEx, and the United States Post Office. Well, FedEx's rates are always automatically updated for customers. But with UPS, if you're using a third-party shipping system, you definitely want to make sure that you're going in and having those rates updated. They should have already been updated for you several days ago. If they haven't, please make sure you're contacting your shipping software vendor to have those changed. Patrick today talked about ways to qualify using IMPB and other things to qualify for discounts with the United States Post Office. Well, those aren't something where the rates need to be changed outside of the standard rates, but they're definitely something where you need to make sure that you're configured properly to get those rates. So the software is communicating with the United States Post Office with the right information, so you're getting charged correctly. And of course, if you're not running your updates on your multi-carrier shipping software, if you're not working well with your multi-carrier shipping vendor, this does put you at risk of the costs that your shipping software is creating are going to diverge from the costs you're actually going to be charged from those carriers. In some cases, that could be minor and it may only be an annoyance to your accounting folks. And in other cases, it may have a dramatic impact in the decisions you should be making in the warehouse. All right, and as we go through this, Patrick, let me go ahead and throw it over to you to talk a little bit more about effectively managing rate changes.
Sure, thanks, Justin. Negotiate with your carriers regularly. We spoke about that a little bit earlier, but the second bullet kind of ties into the first one. Understand what weights and zones you ship to the most. You can effectively negotiate if, let's say, 85% of your packages are going from zone 1 to zones 7 and 8. Skipping the zones 2 to 6, because some of the carriers have different processes according to which zones they're processing your packages. So understand the weights and the zones, and then you can negotiate a little bit better and understand the fees and the surcharges.
Patrick, that's really, really vital. One of the things that we found with our high volume customers is the carriers will come back to them and say, oh, well, you know what, even though the industry got a 5% increase, we're only increasing your rates 2%. Now, the reality is they may have gotten a discount in zones and weights that they don't use. Okay, so a light electronics shipper, gets a discount in shipments over 50 pounds, which they never ship. But the carrier is expressing it as if it were a true overall discount in the system. So really, we can't stress enough understanding how your shipping profile actually looks compared to how your carriers have negotiated a rate change with you.
Exactly. And audit your invoices monthly. We talked about the surcharges. We really didn't get into fuel surcharges. FedEx and UPS have fuel surcharges on ground and air. On ground, it's higher. It's each carrier is between 4% and 5% on their ground fuel surcharges. On air, it's between 2.5% and probably 3.75%. And how do those carriers figure out the fuel surcharges? They're based on the month prior fuel surcharges within the industry. So you really have to delve into your audit and go line item by line item, because you may be getting a 12% discount for volume discounts, but when you factor in the surcharges, it's probably not net at 12%. And utilize technology to compare carriers apples to apples. And an example of that, go ahead, Justin, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so especially if you are auditing, and especially this automation piece here, that's a great point, because as your volume increases, you may choose to use a third-party auditing firm. Okay? And so automating the transmission to them means that can happen automatically, and you can get that feedback. Whether it's your CFO who needs that feedback, your logistics department that needs that feedback, by being able to automate that process, you can ensure that you're on top of any minor changes that the carrier might have made, and you are set up best to take advantage of any of those changes where they can be beneficial to you and your customer experience.
Exactly. And I think we can go into the next slide to multi-carrier shipping, because the last bullet point on rate changes was compare apples to apples and test. And when we go into multi-carrier shipping and why go multi-carrier, we can really talk about testing and comparing apples to apples, because there are strike concerns out there, and they pop up every once in a while. I remember in 1997 was a huge strike with one of the major carriers, and customers were scrambling to try to get their parcels picked up on a daily basis. But test different things, and for instance, if you're using a 2-day service with, say, FedEx or UPS, that 2-day service, your packages are getting delivered on Monday when you're shipping them out on Thursday. If you test the Postal Service's Priority Mail, which is a 1, 2, or 3-day service, remember Saturday being a normal process and delivery day, so those Thursday shipments, Friday's day 1, Saturday's day 2, and Monday's day 3, right? And Monday was the second day on a 2-day shipment with the other carriers. So you're going to gain some transit time and probably save some money. So look at certain days of the week when your shipments are going out, and look at the carriers and test. As Justin said, test. And don't put all your eggs in one basket, because strikes do happen, and we kind of tend to think, I'll just put it off and deal with it when it happens, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah,
Justin,
and it really is. Of course. It really is. You're correct in that testing. And really, you can remove the test piece if you're actually executing all of this logic as you're about to apply the label. So Patrick gave you an example about the difference between postal and some of the major carrier delivery options. One of the things I always love to look at is transaction coming from, let's say, Chicago to specifically to Louisiana. For FedEx Ground, that's a 1-day transit time because of the way their physical network is laid out. For UPS Ground, that's a 3-day transit time. Now, there's nothing wrong with one carrier's network over another, but they're different because of the way they've executed, the packages they're seeing, and being able to compare those apples to apples. Do I have to use an express service to meet my customer's commitment date, or can I leverage a ground service or a postal service in order to significantly reduce my overall costs while still meeting or exceeding my customer's expectation? The ability to do that real time at the scale provides a lot of value and provides a lot of control over the ability to control your customer's experience. All right, so let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about the shipping software, because we want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A here. So Carolyn, let's jump into NeoShip here real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did want to talk a little bit about the software options available, namely 2 with NeoPost and ProShip, that can help you negotiate and navigate these shipping rate changes we just went over. So NeoShip is our multi-carrier shipping software from small to mid-sized shippers, and it really gives you the visibility of all the 3 major carriers, the services they provide, and the prices. So this allows you to choose the best service and the best price for you. And it also, if you do already have pre-negotiated rates with UPS or FedEx, you can upload them and still compare and do that rate shopping that is so effective in lowering your overall costs and making shipping more efficient. And Justin, I'll hand it over to you to talk a little bit about the more enterprise-level software that ProShip offers.
Yeah, so as your volume grows, as you start to see multiple inventory sources, as you may start to use omni-channel shipping, meaning you're using your warehouses, your stores, your 3PLs, and your manufacturers as shipping origins, you may need to upgrade to a full-featured enterprise shipping software, one that'll automate all the business rules, work with various parts of hardware, and of course have a good update strategy to ensure you're always compliant with the carrier's requirements. You want to understand, items like ProShip, we use no third parties where we don't have to, meaning that you have that option of getting changes made for you and having those work, and knowing that there's just one company that's responsible for the actual execution of that software. And of course, we've been talking today about UPS, FedEx, and the United States Post Office. Well, there are more than a dozen carriers in the United States between the regionals and many other couriers and Deliv and Postmates and all these other newer carriers that we're starting to see, newer paradigms of delivery that we're starting to see in the industry. Being able to leverage a software like ProShip can allow you to take advantage of those.
That's a great point, Justin. We didn't really delve into regional carriers, but there are dozens of regional carriers throughout this country that can offer a very good alternative with delivery times and pricing.
All right, so let's go ahead here. We seem to have perfectly left 10 minutes to go through questions. Carolyn, I know in the background the machines have been tabulating all the questions. What do we have?
Absolutely. So one major question we have that I just want to start off with is we've got a couple mailers on the line wondering when they can get information and how they can get information about the USPS rate change, and we will be having a USPS-specific rate change webinar. That's January 24th, and we'll be sending out a link for you to register at the end of this presentation. And we also have a rate guide for the USPS that we will be sending out as well. So stay tuned for that. So we're going to dive into questions. Katie has been going through some of our questions. Katie, what's the first one on the list?
Let me just go into some that we have here. 1 second. Here's an interesting one. Is it safe to say for budgetary reasons we should always look for approximately at least a 3% increase across the board yearly from now on?
Yeah, I would say that's conservative. I would say look at 4%, between 3 and 4% across all the carriers.
Yeah, I'm with Patrick on that. I think 3 is a little conservative.
Does USPS offer contracted discounts like FedEx and UPS do with corporations?
Yes, the Postal Service calls them NSAs, negotiated service agreements. So yes, you can contact your Postal Service sales rep and start the conversations there with the NSAs, and they're tiered, they're volume tiered, and so forth. So absolutely.
Okay, let me look at what else we have here. With dim weights being so expensive, why are the shippers packing a 12 by 12 by 8 and a 12 by 12 by 24 and 8-inch? I'm not even sure if they meant that word or if that's a term I should know. I think they're talking about why they're using those dimensions if dim weights are so expensive.
Why are they using so much void is what it is. So
right.
We've all seen it. We've all seen the videos on YouTube where somebody gets a SD card in a huge box from Amazon. For some of your carriers or for some of your shippers, they have negotiated away those DIM charges for especially for Amazon. Well, they have their own carrier now, so they can get away with a little bit about that. But that being said, sometimes it's just not practical. There are times where you only have so much corrugate sizing in your warehouses. Now, unless you're using, and we didn't discuss any of our automated hardware products like the ProShip CVP, which creates a box around your goods, unless you're using a solution like that allows you to create the box specifically for the multi-size line items that you may have, you are going to stand a risk of having some void. even if you're using knockdown boxes or things of that nature, not every packer is going to be able to put everything in the best Tetris fashion, if you will. So sometimes it's a matter of they've run out of the appropriate size corrugate and they just have to use what they have to use and use that void fill, whether it's air pillows or the crumpled paper or anything of that nature. Luckily, we don't see very many packing peanuts anymore. But it really does come down to sometimes just that we ran out of boxes. We've got to use the next size up because we can't fit it in a small box.
Okay. Is priority mail guaranteed in 3 days?
That's a great question. The Postal Service's only guaranteed product is Priority Mail Express. That's the one that's delivered 365 days a year, but some rural zip codes, it's a 2-day service. But no, Priority Mail is a 1, 2, or 3-day service based on origin and destination zip codes. But it's not guaranteed, no.
What is a third-party billing fee?
Great question. So first, that means you need to understand what third-party billing is. So let's go ahead and take this step back to understand third-party billing. So if I am, if I have sold a bunch of goods, let's say I've got 1,000 widgets in stock, my manufacturer has 10,000 widgets, and I end up selling 1,200 widgets. That means I have 200 widgets I have to have shipped from the manufacturer if they do drop shipping, meaning they're going to ship on my behalf, okay, using my account, and they will actually, in their software that they're using, whether that's directly in UPS.com, FedEx.com, whoever the case may be, they're going to actually say, all right, we want this billed to my account, okay, rather than being billed to the actual manufacturer's account. Now, if they're doing that in the transaction, meaning there's 2 accounts in that transaction, that's a third-party bill. It's being shipped to the second party, okay? It's being shipped from the first party, but me as a third party is actually the one getting billed for it, hence where the term comes from. Okay. Now, that requires that the carriers do some connections in the background to make sure the right person gets charged. It also requires that package level detail gets transmitted before those charges start to go into place. And that's why we see that package level detail fee this year for the United States, for UPS. But the idea is that because that requires processing time by the carrier, they're going to charge their customers for that. So they're going to charge, in my case, my manufacturer, who's going to ship those 200 pieces that I talked about, and that manufacturer, therefore, is going to probably add a fee back to me because I am causing them to incur additional fees on those 200 shipments. Unless I say, well, here's an account that I specifically went to UPS or FedEx and had set up for your origin, ship on that account. Now, there may be some other handling fees and things of that nature. Obviously, there's effort on part of that manufacturer, but that would mean that to the carrier, they're getting a direct charge saying, in this case, me, let's say Justin's sales and shipping, I'm the one who's the first party in this case, even though it's coming from a manufacturer. Hopefully that helps answer some questions there for everybody. Patrick, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Because I know this is something we all deal with in the industry.
Yeah, no, you said it perfectly. I think it was pretty succinct.
All right, so we're nearing the hour, and we're going to wrap up with one final question. But for those that weren't answered, we are going to sit down as a group and answer them, compile them into a PDF, and send them out. So you will get your answers, just not right now. So be on the lookout for an email with that PDF. It'll also, the email will also contain a copy of the PowerPoint deck and a link to the recording. So if you did have to leave or you want to revisit something that we said, you'll have the opportunity to do so. So Katie, take it away.
So the last question we will answer is, do the carriers do the last mile like FedEx and UPS, or is that just the post office?
That's a great question. Yeah, FedEx and UPS want to get away from delivering the last mile. That's one of the main reasons why they have a residential delivery surcharge and an extended residential delivery surcharge. So that's part of the whole partnership with the Parcel Select program. They don't want to deliver the last mile. They don't want their carrier driving 6 miles to deliver, out of town to deliver one package and 6 miles back to start delivering the rest. the Postal Service has to deliver to every address in this country. And that includes people living at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So, yeah, they want to...
To say it a slightly different way, right now, yes, all three carriers deliver to all addresses. The FedEx and UPS are making it more costly in order to deliver to all of them. It's one of the reasons why you see FedEx and UPS starting to put out a lot of collection points, and being able to ship to those collection points, being able to advertise those collection points on your e-commerce site can be very important to help reduce those costs. So because these collection points, as Patrick was mentioning, that means we can take one truck and we can empty half that truck at whether it's a grocery store, at a set of lockers sitting directly in front of an apartment complex, something of that nature. It becomes a lot more efficient for those carriers who are not obligated, like the United States Post Office is, to deliver to every address. It becomes a lot more cost effective for them, and therefore they're encouraging you by pricing to leverage those models.
All right, well, wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for attending this parcel rate change webinar. And thank you very much to Pat and Justin for lending us your expertise for the past hour. You guys have been great. And just to restate, we'll be sending out an email to all of you probably next week, because we do have questions coming in that we want to get to and we want to answer correctly. So be on the lookout for an email that will have answers to your questions in a PDF, the PowerPoint deck, and a link to the webinar. Thank you all very much, and have a great week.